All right, so we're good? All right. So welcome everybody. Thank you for having me here. Indeed, I'm Jeroen Willemsen. Thank you for the awesome introduction. Today I want to talk about teaching a man how to fish. So how do you teach the organization to become more secure and to go on with other stuff? Now, before I'm going to talk a lot for the next half an hour. First, I want to know a little bit about you. Who of you is a contractor basis? Is working on a contractor basis with a customer? Who of you is internal? A lot of internal people. Who of you is from a consultancy company or something similar to that? All right. So, a little bit about me. I'm Jeroen Willemsen. I'm a security architect at Xebia, but it's a consultant role, so mostly deployed to other organizations. And over time, I did a lot. I started out as a full stack developer, and then I mean not just back-end, front-end, but also stuff that's harder to touch. And I'm currently the leader of the Mobile Security Testing Guide project, together with Sven Slye, who's sitting over there at the end. Say hi, Sven. Oh, another Sven. I'm sorry about that one. Oh yeah, okay, cool. So the way that I want to make this work is because I'll be sending half an hour of a lot of information to you guys. If you have questions in the meantime, or you really think like, hey, I want to shout something out in there, just raise your hand. That's also fine. Then just only at the end. So maybe we can steer the content a little bit and get somewhere. So today I want to talk about the situation where you enter as a security coach or as a security architect or as a security consultant, and what happens if you do your normal job, as in, and you're going to stick with that job forever because you kind of have to, or the organization will have troubles if you don't. How you can be an actual security coach to coach a team and move forward, and then I want to talk about the pitfalls, what could possibly go wrong in there, and have a short recap. All right? So the situation. So what often happens basically is here you see some sort of timeline, imaginary timeline, let's say, which says something about the actual security maturity within your organization, which can be measured over multiple ways, and time. So when you start out, at the beginning of the curve, there's issues in there all over the place, easy vulnerabilities, a lot of low-hanging fruit that's in the code, and processes aren't mature and stuff like that. So basically they hire you to start fixing this stuff. And that works, because the maturity will go up, because you'll find ways to fix stuff, which is awesome. Next thing that happens is that you're able to persuade management to actually hire more of you. Because, you need a security team. You want to do this right. You want to get somewhere. And it's actually an awesome idea because, we got to help the developers, we got to help the testers, the business people, everybody. That's cool. Then you start crunching as a team because you got your team, you got it working, and you figure, I just have to push a little harder. Or you figure something like, okay, there's this new cool technology I want to learn more about. And you got so super duper excited about that technology that you want to move along in the area of that technology and not in your current organization. So you had your push and people start leaving, which basically means you'll start having a decay because transfer wasn't that smooth, stuff happened around, and in the end, the organization over time just got a little bit more secure, but the moment you stepped out because you did a lot of your stuff yourself, you're back in the old level again. Well, actually you aren't, because you're doing the cool stuff in the next gig, which is great. But how about the client that you helped? Did you actually help them? No, you applied a patch. There was this beautiful wound, and we applied a bandage, and then we walk away, scratch it off, and figure, it's going to be fine. Didn't bleed when it was in there for a while, right? Why would I care? And that's what happens a lot in the contractor business. So you get a gig, do the stuff, and you leave the customer behind. Because we love doing our gig. Of course, for the internal people, I don't want to make dark and black paintings about contractors, because contractors do this stuff for a good reason. We want to help the industry. We really want to help you as a customer. That's not about doing stuff wrong or anything. Same thing actually works for many internal people in a large organization. So you first move to security team for sub-base X, and then you move to another part of the organization, you start helping that security team, and then you hear during a cup of coffee with your old team that the same thing is happening over there. Because it happens. That's just how stuff works, because security is people work, right? So how do we can fix this? Well, first we should figure what happened here. And the first thing is you are not scalable. I am not scalable. As a security consultant, I've made many mistakes in my life. And one thing is that I thought that it was easy to copycat, help other people copycat me and go somewhere. That doesn't work. Because in the end, the copycats need to remain at that organization doing the exact same thing, but we didn't move anywhere. We're still doing the same stuff, now only other people hold that bandage and I'm not the one holding it anymore. Okay, because most important part is, if you just do the work, because security is hard, then somebody needs to pick it up after you to do the work. Well, that makes sense, right? Because we're honest people, like to work hard, and that's not the problem. It's not our intentions. Our intentions are good, but the way we work this stuff through, at least how I started with my security career, might be less optimistic than it should be, right? So a lot of things can have happened beyond that, that's outside of your grip. I'm not saying if this happens, then it's probably you. It could be a lot of things in the organization. For instance, you had to deal with the symptoms of insecure stuff because it wasn't clear where the actual security issue was. And most of the time, the actual problem is not the developer. It could be senior level management, not wanting to change the program as such to actually get somewhere. Most of this is actually about ownership versus responsibility. Once you actually have the ownership and you feel the pride of doing something right, then security is not that much of an issue because you want to do this right. You want to be proud of this. And that's not just at the developer level, it goes all the way up. You have to be proud of your company, of the product. You want to get this right. You want to help your teams to do this right as a manager. You want to be proud of your managers, and so on and so forth. It never ends. And of course, a lot of other things could go wrong, you know, lack of support, lack of knowledge, lack of budgets, lack of understanding how to automate stuff and keep on doing stuff by manually in a GUI. And I'm not saying doing manual stuff is wrong, but as a real techie, I really like to just automate it. Again, senior management, decisions, budget stuff, that's mostly above my pay grade, but you know, you have to live by it. Or it could be that the risk appetite is way different. Because sometimes when you're working at an organization, you'll find out the hard way after half a year of work that they actually have a plan B financially and that they're actually okay with getting leaked in. It might not be the best strategy, but yeah, that's been working. Or the actual risk is way lower, because the actual stuff you're trying to protect in there might not be as valuable as you thought it was. So you might as well step back and do it the other way around. It might actually be that the developers developing the product realize this already. And we're running behind them to actually push something that they don't believe in because the risk wasn't that high. You weren't protecting a bank or the military, you were protecting a marketing gig. Well, I understand it's good to not leak the marketing material before it's time, but there are limits in there. So enter the security coach. Before I'm going to talk a bit about who you're going to be as a security coach and reference a lot of other people in there because half an hour is kind of short to explain it, but luckily many people within OWASP had awesome presentations last year on the AppSecUSA, for instance, and this year as well, where a lot of stuff is going to be explained very well. I'm going to reference them timely. But the most important thing about a security coach you should always remember is do your job with the end in mind. The end in mind is just they carry on, you're no longer there because you're going to move, you know, to a next function. Might be another managerial type of function. Might be that you're going to be with another team or as a contractor work with another customer. So whatever you're going to do, always think about, can I make this last? Do I have to make this last actually? Because if it's just, you know, being the garbage guy, taking the garbage out, and then trying to teach people how to clean their house properly, it's a different story than continuously being the cleaner guy. All right. One thing that's really important next is your attitude. So this year at AppSecUSA, Martin Kloploch gave a beautiful talk about don't feed the hippos. Who of you have seen that talk? I'm definitely from the other side of the ocean, sorry about that. I think it's very important for everybody, if you want to do some proper coaching, watch that talk. I'm not going to spoil the end, but it's all about attitude. And once you've seen it, at least I realized again, ooh, I got some stuff I might want to adjust over there again. And every time I hear similar stories like this talk, more talks similar to this, I get the same feeling like, okay, let's start with the attitude adjustment again. Let's make this work. Let's Think about how I interact with the other people. But I really would like to recommend you to watch it. It's on YouTube already, so you can grab it and check it out. And the most important thing, I guess, is really think about how you want to help the developers as a security guy. Not just be the guy that answers questions, not just be the guy that says, oh, we got a bunch of requirements, thou shalt walk, but be the crowbar that actually creates space for the developers to do the stuff that they'll be proud of. And it's not just your security work. There's a lot of other work they'll be more proud of, and then the other stuff starts kicking in anyway. The next thing you should always first ask yourself is the simple thing, what needs to be done and why does it need to be done? Because the product should be secure. No, it's not about just securing the product. Start thinking again. Start thinking, making the picture a little bit broader. I know we all like to secure stuff. That's the problem. Actually, that's the beautiful part of our work. It's a beautiful part of OWASP. That's who we are. But often, why do you want to secure this? Why do you want to accelerate? And if you start asking yourself why, you'll end up in another reasoning path than just directly running after stuff that you think you should fix because you think you're necessary over there. Yes, we all are necessary. Security is a big field. That's really all okay. But the most important thing is ask yourself why. It might be that you end up with a different way of securing stuff after all. You know, we start with the planning phase basically. For the planning phase, it's really important to start basically realize that it's not about the security process as already said, but it's about everything. It's about being as holistic as possible. And I'm a human, I'm not very good at being holistic to be honest. So it's good to talk to other people, to reflect on things before you start moving along. It's fine to take a week or two for that to understand what you have to do, especially if you're there internally, or if you're here for the long haul anyway, not just for do your pen test and walk out, but more of a coaching strategy. And make sure that during the time you're visible, that you understand the goals, that you understand who's responsible and who's accountable. What keeps that guy awake? What's actually the real deal in there? So don't stay behind your computer. Start having coffees. And indeed, start being that, typical help desk guy that's going to answer the questions because it's part of our role as a security coach. It's not the primary thing, but you can start feeding in stuff. Next thing is, after you know the what and the why, it's time to start measuring stuff. Because if you don't measure, you can't improve it. It's fine if you put a bandage on something, but do you know whether the wound is healing if you don't know what to look for? If you don't rip it off, you're probably cause hazard, right? So measure this stuff. And there's a lot of things we can measure. How well are the DevOps practices? How well are we doing in the Agile way? Are we doing our security practices well? And there's a lot of different fields we can have focus for, and there's a bunch of metrics. Focus. Because security has never been about having as many metrics as you can. It's about finding the metrics that make sense in this area. Because often security, remember, we were not fixing the problem, but often the symptoms. And there are metrics that can show why the process is so bad and why you're actually necessary. So then you have to make it visible. So you can create graphs and you can use the capability maturity model, for instance, or something similar. Just make sure that the models can be unified. So the metrics that you showed before, those frameworks, you can select parts of it that you think are necessary after interviewing many stakeholders and start projecting them and tell, look, this is where I found problems. For instance, over here, this is a process, a team and culture thing. And as you can see, the agile practices aren't very mature in there, and there's a lot of issues with team building, and there's hardly any autonomy in there. Wait a minute, no team building, so people aren't trusting each other? Maybe, probably, because everybody's just doing their own stuff, hope it works. How do you think pull requests are handled? You'd say, thou shalt review for security issues. But if people can't trust and can't give feedback, do you really think this works? No, obviously it's not going to work. You have to have a team in there. People have to believe in each other. And then you can give a gig in there. Otherwise, you're just running off of symptoms. And symptom patching is cool, but not very effective. Same thing holds for process and practice. If there's something they believe in, they better be able to do it. Whether it's how you handle your incidents, whether it's how you develop your security controls, whether it's how you do your risk and compliance check-in depending on the industry you're in. Make sure you get the right ideas in there. And obviously there's some security stuff in there, but I haven't touched any code or anything, right? So then the security maturity could be taken in, And over there you see a lot of other metrics, so risk appetite, security testing, security maturity. And now we're talking the symptoms you want to fix. But you'll find out the moment you actually first helped the company or actually recommended people that actually can help, because as a security guy, I'm not the best agile coach. I have to admit that. So I'm not going to be the guy who's going to fix the agile processes to make teams collaborate better. No, you're going to recommend them, please hire that guy before you continue with me, because I'm just doing bandages all over the place, man. And that will actually help. Because from there onward, it's going to be a lot easier if you have a proper functioning team to actually get somewhere and do your stuff. And teams will listen. That's awesome. Next, what you have to do is basically get your security teams in shape and train them. Can anybody describe what they see over there? Just shout it. That's fine. No wrong answer. Exactly. Over here, you see a kickbox training. And you know what I like about kickbox training? Who's doing the kicking? Sorry? The steer group? The student, exactly. The student is doing the kicking. The trainer is just impacting in there and giving directions. But the student does the work. And this is something you should always remember when you train your people. Nobody likes, okay, everybody likes the first 10 minutes that you're ramping up a lot of scripts in there and you show how easy it is to spin up 12 containers to do some vulnerability checking and stuff. That's fine. But do you actually think they know what to do after that? No, obviously they don't. So help them. Make this work. And the way you make this work is by actually be the trainer at the side deck. Give a short example and then assist them in doing stuff. And assisting doesn't mean, oh, he doesn't get it. Why don't you let me? No. It means actually start talking to the guy. The moment you touch your keyboard, you failed. It's that easy. And if you really have to touch the keyboard, it's hopefully because you have to do Alt-Tab because it was in the wrong screen. And otherwise, don't. You don't have to. Just be patient. And do as I say, not as I do. Because for me, this is really hard. This is hard stuff. I'm a techie guy. I try to help people and be friendly, but I'm a techie guy. So I want to, pop the shell. And it's different. Many more things about this is introduced in this talk from Peter Chesna. Who of you have seen this? Because it's been on a bunch of conferences, luckily, also on this side of the ocean. I probably can steal half an hour of your time again, right? By just saying you have to watch this. Because he really explains very well how you want to train security champions right. And I can, repeat after him. That doesn't make sense. Just watch his talk. I think it's good for you. And just don't overdo it. You see all these requirements? The fun stuff, it's always overlapping. So you talk to a legal guy, you talk to a compliancy guy, and if they both read the stuff the same way, they'll say the same thing. Otherwise, a developer or a security team has to listen to two conflicting requirements. Now, that doesn't help. And you can get those guys in a room for once, but it doesn't help. Who's going to remember this? I mean, if you have a policy house over thousands of pages, it's fine to have that, because in some industries you do. But if you're going to put that somewhere, who's going to read that? Well, I can tell you who's going to read it. Everybody's going to see the first page, look at the page indicator, and then figure, okay, go. Doesn't matter. So keep it small. Why do we do this again? To keep confidential information confidential, to protect the integrity of the information against unauthorized access and modification, mostly modification that is, of course, and to make stuff available that needs to be available. It's that simple. We don't do magic. This is our job. So keep it simple. Take a look at the CIA rating of the information and then figure out what do you have to do. If you got low confidentiality, overdo the whole thing, but make sure you get the basics right. If you have low availability, you don't have to spend a lot of money on oversized clusters and stuff and make something very high available if they only care if it's available for 10 minutes a month. I don't know. Stop doing it, please. And obviously there are some special cases, and what we often did in the industry is say, there's credit card data in there and the systems are connected that way, you should secure all connecting system as such, because no, you don't. You should isolate the system where the credit card info is in and then move along so you can focus on securing it. And everybody's been using this example, but it's somehow, in many companies, we're still not very able to follow up on that if it's about lesser visible requirements. So make sure you actually isolate certain regulations or rules and see if you can see which requirements specifically belong to that, and only apply it to the assets where you really need to. So we're still simplifying. We haven't done a lot yet. We just started to think about how I can simplify what actually needs to happen. And we haven't done anything yet. We just simplified and trained people. Remember that. And then you can start threat modeling. Next after me, there's a wonderful presentation about threat modeling, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very cool. So if you're interested in this, please join it. What's so nice about threat modeling, the moment you start asking yourself what could possibly go wrong, you already are raising security awareness. And obviously that's not the most mature way of threat modeling, and you can have lots of discussions on how to do that and how to make this interesting or how to be complete. But the first time you do threat modeling, make sure you actually open people up and don't push an Excel down their throat. Don't make stuff complicated, but make them realize what could go wrong. It's nice to automate threat modeling, but what I really learned the hard way is if you start with the automation in the early phase, people will just follow the tools and implement the stuff that the tool says and miss half of the stuff that could possibly go wrong given different vectors combined, because they never had to learn to think about that. So if you have something like this with a lot of fields in there, stop doing it for now, okay? What you have to do, just simplify it. Group characteristics in different groups and see if you can make that work. So if you want to say something about a certain exploit or the capabilities of an actor, start combining different attributes of an actor, for instance, and just make a simple profile. The same thing holds for the amount of exploitability of something. Just start simplifying stuff, group things together, and then start having supportive tooling that works for them. And often it doesn't mean just shovel an Excel down somebody's face, but it means doing something that works for them. And train teams to use it and make sure they can actually do it without you, and you'll never have to attend those sessions again, and they can actually come up with threat modeling themselves. It doesn't mean you're not going to be there to do the threat modeling with them because it's an enjoyable work, but the moment they can actually do it themselves, it really helps. Next up is automating. The moment you start automating, you can actually get somewhere. So the way this works basically is you start using the tools that the developers already use. You start integrating your policy house in there and just make sure only the really important policies are there summarized. You can actually get somewhere. The next thing you're going to do is do the security automation. Now, I used to give a lot of talks about technical stuff like security automation and policy automation. If you're interested in techie stuff, you can find it online, and there's many people that said wonderful things about this. And I think it's important because doing stuff by hand, that makes us really slow. And of course you need your additional controls, etc., but you shouldn't be the one implementing them. In fact, you should be the one thinking about how to let go. And letting go can be very hard because this security thing is your baby now. I get that. This company is your child. You feel utterly responsible for your customers, and it's a good trait. But at some point you have to let go. Can I ask an awkward personal question? Who of you is a parent or a grandfather or feels kind of parenty? Some point, I'm a father as well, some point I realized my kid's gonna turn 18 and she's gonna study somewhere else. That doesn't mean I'm right now letting go already, because I want to be the best dad I can be. But at some point in time, you have to let her or him go. Same thing holds for your company or your security team. So think about that. And never forget, it's always about the developers. It's about nobody else but them, because otherwise nothing gets working. And if you feel less inspired, Google this and you'll see an awesome dance and be very inspired again. Pitfalls, just a very short one for 3 minutes. Developers don't want to code. They don't want to do your paperwork. Death by Excel is a common thing that happens a lot where developers are moving away, and you end up with lesser powerful teams because the guy that actually was able to do the stuff was doing the additional tasks that gave him a better paycheck, which wasn't that he liked, it was something you made him do. Embed and automate, get away. Don't give people a large list of documents saying, oh, you can find it over there, and then be helpful by saying the paragraph and the page number. That's not how this works. And I know everybody knows it doesn't work that way, but we often do it. Again, embed and automate. The talk that was just previous to mine was really awesome because it showed everything was just done through the tool. There wasn't a lot of additional information shoved down the developers. It was just do exactly what you have to do. For those who just entered the room for this talk, you probably have some homework now. Sorry about that. If you forget the measure, you get the same problem, because you don't know how good you're doing, and your observations might be very different than from the major stakeholders, because you started out right now with the planning phase, and if you stop continuously checking if you're okay, and continuously doesn't mean that every hour you're going to ask the stakeholder, am I doing all right? No, it means that at a settled time, like a quarter, or every month, or every half a year, depending on how large everything is, start revving up. You know, like my previous speaker said, the previous speaker at the stage said, monitor, get the things together, and see how well you're doing. Don't become Mr. SDLC. I know it's very nice nowadays to have a lot of opinions about how you should do stuff, and that you're the one that actually supposed to be doing everything with the teams, that you're supposed to be the only gatekeeper, but raise a security team. You need multiple gatekeepers. You're an awesome gatekeeper, otherwise you wouldn't even be here, or you're going to be one of the most awesome gatekeepers. I'm pretty confident in everybody, but let's make sure that you make sure that other people can have that function as well. And let them collaborate. Remember the whole agile thing where I started off with as a symptom thing? It's also holds for security teams. Let's make sure we can really collaborate in there, otherwise you don't get squat done. And deliver finalized products, that's even horrifying. Because you really think that other people will take over the product as is? The moment you leave, what basically happens if you just transfer documentation, I'm not saying do not document, hold on, I'm just saying don't just throw it over the fence of documentation. Because what happens is that people will turn stuff off, burn their hands and figure, oh, that's why it was on. And it's a bit too late. And people will not like to use stuff that's completely overcomplicated in there. So make sure it's simple, it's actively maintained by other people before you leave. And stop complicating stuff. We are brilliant people. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room is. Most AppSec people are very smart, otherwise you wouldn't even be tempted to go here because you wouldn't bother. But brilliant people tend to overcomplicate, and that's dangerous. So keep it simple. Last thing is, don't be the chief excuse officer. What basically happens, if you blame somebody else, you're out of control. You can never fix this anymore. It's a developer. No, it's probably you. Otherwise, a developer would have been able to do this. And obviously, I'm over pushing right now. I get that, and I hope you're getting that as well. Just a little bit of sarcasm to keep you guys awake after half an hour of information transfer. But don't lose control. Same thing holds for circumstances. It's such a difficult system, and the compiler is really heavy. You think you can rewrite the compiler? You can't. So think of something. And this is not easy. I think this is the hardest part. Again, do as I say, not as I do. If you reflect on that, it's hard. Last thing that's similar is wanting to hold on, because I'm running a bit out of time. I'm going to speed up in there. The moment you keep on holding on, you won't be able to give space to the new generation of security guys that's been hardly trained in new technologies and that can rev up stuff way faster than we can. I'm only 30-something, you can guess the last number, it's not that hard. And I already see sometimes people that are way faster in some technologies because they basically started with a student to have a hobby side in there, and I still have to Google some stuff sometimes to see how I need to use, for instance, some Terraform code and do this correct, and they're doing it just blindly. So make sure you give space to people. All right, recap. Start analyzing with the end in mind. Have proper metrics and measure. Train your security team, your developers, and your champions. You'll need everyone in there. Don't overdo and overcomplicate. Automate as much as you can. And raise teams with the idea of you leaving, even if you're internal. Because, by the way, if you're able to make that happen while you're internal, your job's going to be a lot easier after that. Because if you would get ill or anything happens, you don't have to be stressed. If you go on a holiday, you'll actually have a holiday. Not a computer bleeping next to you and your wife looking at you or your husband or whatever. When are you going to put that thing away? No, you can actually put it away. All right, sorry for running a bit out of time. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?